Hi, welcome back to the MemSQL Developer livestream. Where we left off last time was we had the form so that we could submit things. That was capturing all the things, and we got everything lined up just so. But where we left off was it wasn't yet saving to the API. So let's dive in and let's build out that API so that we can get it to persist to the database. So we've got our database spun up, thank you to Docker and MemSQL, and we've got one product in our catalog. Here's our component that was able to do all of the things, but our save method is pretty anemic. We have some stuff to do to wire it up to call the API, in particular to broadcast this event up to the view and let the view do it so that we can then create so we can put this in Storybook and not have data access in the middle of our Storybook. But our task today is the API side of things. So I've opened up just the API folder, and let's do the process that we need to be able to do these CRUD pieces. Now it'd be fun to test drive this, so let's create a bunch of tests to talk about what we need to be able to do in here. So here's our product method. And right now, our product just does a get by product code. And we're going to want to do more. We're going to want to do a post to create a new one, a put to update one, and a delete to delete one. We'll also want all of those change methods to only work for authenticated users, so not for unauthenticated users. So let's create some tests to do that. Now, first step, I noticed that a lot of the tests that we're doing, we're actually putting in, where did it go? Oh, these are unit tests, and they definitely won't have that. But let's open up an integration test. And we're doing a lot of this wait longer piece. Let's see if we can do that in one place. That wasn't it. Here, let's look at this. So module.exports. I found this Stack Overflow article that talks about doing a timeout in all the places, and I wish the documentation was a little bit better. But in our jest.config, we can just say setup after env and add a setup file, and then in our setup file, we can just export that single thing that will do it for everybody. So let's do that. Here's our jest.config, and in our jest.config, we're already collecting code coverage and all the things. We will set this up, and let's just call it jest.setup.js so that we can see more content there. New file. Here is jest.setup.js. And here in jest.setup.js, we'll go grab that one liner that allows us to do that. Now in this case, it's 10,000 milliseconds, 10 seconds, and we were at 5 seconds. So now we've got 5 seconds running for all tests. Now this is both the unit tests and the integration tests. So would it be helpful to categorize them and only export one group? Yeah, maybe, but so far we don't really have good grouping in our tests either. Well, let's group the tests because we're about to get stuff. We have here in our source code, we have tests, and we have source code, and we have mocks. So let's kind of separate things out a little bit better. Let's create a new folder, and we'll call this new folder test. Inside the test folder, we'll create a new folder called unit. And inside the test folder, we'll also create a new folder called end-to-end. And this kind of mirrored our setup in the View app where we had end-to-end tests and we had unit tests, and each one had a separate runner. In this case, Jest will run all of the things still, but we'll be able to separate those tests into pieces. Now we can, to get Jest to run all of those tests, here in Jest setup, not Jest setup, Jest config, it talks about where do I find the tests. And by default, it looks for anything that has a test and a spec in its file name, and it will look for both JavaScript and TypeScript. Now that's completely sufficient. We could put in a specific folder, but what we notice here is it's not limited to a folder right now. So I think we're good. we can just say, hey, go run all of the tests in all of the places, and we'll be fine. But we do need to tell TypeScript about this new folder. Right now, it's only looking for the source folder for all of the content that it wants in different places. So let's also tell it it's going to compile things based on the test folder. And so now it will go grab all of the test files and all of the source files as it compiles. And that will allow us to do both just tests and production runs. So now that we've got that, we can start to move some of these tests that we've got around. Let's put this app end-to-end. Yes, I would like to move it. And this code is automatically going to help update the imports. That's perfect. Let's do it. We've got this unit test, but this unit test is inside a routes folder. So let's add a new routes folder, new folder, routes. And now inside this routes folder in the unit test, can move that one. Yes, I would like to update the refs. Let's also grab the product and put it there. Move. Yes, I would like to do it. And now we have this clean separation. Mocks go into the unit test project. Yes, I would like to move. Yes. And just double checking. Let's go run all of our tests. npm run test. Well, before we do it, I see there's a lot of unsaved files. Let's save all the things. Save all. Okay, npm run test. So just is going to fire up. It found all of our tests in their new places. That's perfect. The tests are going, go, 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 go. This is so silly. Okay, so our tests are taking a bit. That's totally fine. But we're using supertest, and we've got all of our things calling all of the places. Now we're running code coverage. Great, all of our tests passed. So we haven't broken anything yet. Let's start off with creating the tests that will validate that only authenticated users can use the routes that we want to use. So right now we have end-to-end tests. These tests will probably be more about the authentication system. So we may want to say, okay, these are tests about auth. I'll create a new folder and type routes. Here's the routes test. And so we'll have a new file. This is auth.spec.ts. And here in auth.spec.ts, we already have a bunch of unit tests that test the auth system already. So let's see if we can move those into place. So we don't need to wait any longer, or we don't need to wait longer now for these end-to-end tests. So we can remove that. This last one validates that we can get login information if we're logged in. This one validates that we can get a 401 if we're not logged in. And this one is a product test. You know, arguably this one is a smoke test. That's pretty cool. So here, this will be routes auth. We don't need the product specific content, and we're moving up one directory now. We can also now yank these tests out of this project, or this test suite, since we've moved them. We don't need to wait any longer, or we don't need to wait since we have that global setup there. And now with the global setup, we'll also have that in one place if we need to change it. Okay, so here we're calling API auth, and we expect it to have a 401. We could duplicate this test a bunch of times for all of the things that we want to have authenticated and unauthenticated. But instead, let's do something like this. Let's create an array and say .for each and object, and then create a new test for each of these objects. Now that's really beautiful because now we can say, oh, I don't know, this is URL. And this is status. And now we've got them all kind of in one place. We do have one thing here that is a method. But let's say we've got status. We want it to be 401. And method will be get. And URL will be this URL. Now the cool thing here is to create another test. We could say, well, this test, we expect to get a 200 on a get to API products page 0. That's cool. We just created 2 tests out of the same test. So this should get status when method to URL. Awesome. Now we do need to get these in place. So rather than just this, let's say we have status, method, and URL. And this is of type status is a number, method is a string. Well, it's really an enum, and URL is also a string. Okay. Now we do need to do some URL magic here. Really what we want to do is something like this, and that's valid JavaScript. But in our TypeScript, this method doesn't have a indexer, and it would expect this to be a number, and so we kind of can't do this. Not valid TypeScript. Well, not valid with the definitions that we have. So let's say let res, and we'll say it's of type response, but let's come back to that. Switch on method case get res equals await request.get URL. And we could do a little bit more abstraction to, kind of get this switch case to be in one place. But this kind of gets it done for now. Post, put, delete. Now the cool thing here is that in that other case where we don't have anything, we could constrain this to be an enum, but let's just say in the default, throw new error, don't know how to method. And now we can, TypeScript can nicely assume that response is valid by the time we get to here. It's not undefined. Well, response is of type callback handler, supertest.test. So we can say this is test. And now we can pull in test from supertest. Oh, that wasn't right. Let me go look in my notes. Response. It is of type response. So here's response. Let me go double check. Yeah, so now that'll work. So it'll go do all the things that we want to do. Now we could say in this case .send some object and give it a post body, but our goal is not to test what the actual method does. Our goal is to test whether we got authentication or not. Is this a unit test? Do we want to mock out the actual implementation? We could, but making this an integration test is kind of cool because, well, we'll just get to see the actual results. We won't get kind of fake results based on interesting things. So API auth should get a 401 if we don't have a user and we're not sending in a user. Product 0 should get a 200 because we're getting that list of products. Product slash, well, not a product. How do we get a not a product? Well, we can guess not found. Maybe somebody's going to create a not found. But let's also say GUID. Let's go generate a GUID and randomly invent some product code. So even if they did like quick create a product on any response, this isn't foolproof, especially because it's an integration test, but that gets us started. So I am going to import v4 from UUID. UUID is that package that gives us GUIDs. And I'm just going to say as GUID. And now I can just call this GUID method and it'll do what we need to do. Next up, we would need to npm install --save-dev UUID and also type/UUID. I've already done that previously. So we've got the types installed, and now we're randomly generating a URL so that we make sure that we don't accidentally bump into a product that already exists. So we should get 200. This method will work on Authenticated. That's perfect. Let's also do a post to create a new product, so we won't have a product here. And we'll also do a put to change a product. Now, if I'm passing in the name here, but I wanted to change the name, do I need to put the new ID? Do I put the old ID? Let's actually say this is an ID instead of a name. So we'll just say -1. I assume that you won't have a product that is ID -1 in the database. We could also use 0 or maybe 1,000,000, but you know, just knowing that it's out of range, that's probably sufficient. So here, when we try to update it, we should get a 404. I can't update that product. And then delete, we want to also make sure that we're hitting a product that doesn't exist. We don't want our test to accidentally delete data out of our database. So here's -1, and now we've got it. So there's all of our integration tests to validate authentication. We've enumerated all the URLs in our API so far. We could do something like, you know, interrogate all of our routes and ensure that all of them are represented here, or automatically generate this based on interesting things. But for now, we've got it. One more in here is the put, where I log in. And this one, I'm assuming that without a body, I'm going to get a 200, but I might get a 401. We can go look at that. Let's go look at that method and see how it works. Okay, so if I log in and I pass in the username and password, and both of them are blank, which in this case we're not passing a body, I would expect a 401. So we can validate that that works as expected, 401. Now that isn't really a valid test, because what we're asking to validate is, can I get in with an unauthenticated user? And we're saying no, but we're not passing in the things. Really what we wanted to say was, I can get in with an unauthenticated user, but I can't get in with invalid credentials. So this test probably doesn't make as much sense. Can't log in with no user pass. Okay. Not a valid test because can't log in with no user pass. Cool. So we've got the TDD style mechanism for all of the authentication that we want to do on our API. Now let's go build out the test that we want to do here. Now this is a little bit funky. It would be cool if we could pass in a number or a name, and maybe the number would 301 us to the name, or maybe it would be a completely separate API, one for unauthenticated use and one for authenticated use that would take a number. We could go in that direction if we wanted to, but let's just leave this one. Get by product name gives us really elegant URLs in our front page, and doing the put, update, and delete by ID, that's totally fine. Okay, so we've got our end-to-end tests for authentication. Let's create a new file, and we're going to say product.spec.ts. Now we could say product.e2e.spec.ts, but this is good. Now we do need to do all of our standard spin up content, so I'm just going to go grab, let's go grab all of this and set it in place and then delete things. We want kind of more of a normal test. Now we already have a test for get, but it's baked into this test. Now this test does kind of a smoke test, go get the product list, and if the product list succeeds, go get the product detail for the first product. Let's see if we can yank this out and put that in our new test. Because we really do want to say, should get product by product code, and this test then will do all of those pieces. Ooh, it looks like we also spilled a little bit here, because this says test 1, but there's test 2, my bad. Okay, so we do want to get by product ID, and we want this const response. We'll go get this. This request comes in from supertest. So let's go grab supertest. And this is of type product. We definitely need that. Thank you, VS Code. But let's go get these products. So we want products, let products to be a type of product array. And really we want something before all that will go get the products. So we want to say products equals product fixture. Well, we will just say get all products. We'll await that. Get all products. We really want a fixture that will do that. Import get all products from fixture. Actually, we'll need to go up 2 directories. Fixture get product list. Cool. Let's go build out that product list. Now we have a test right here that will that will go get all of our products, and so we can probably recycle a lot of this into place in that fixture. Now we could just do a database query, but we've got an API right here. Let's just go do it. New folder, fixtures. Let's create a new file, and this file will be product list.ts. Here's our product. Here's the start of our product list. We want a function that will say export default async function get product list, take in nothing, and return a product array. And we're going to make the assumption that one of our that at least one product exists in our database. That's a decent assumption because all of our other tests make that assumption too. So now let's set up app. Let's set up server. We do want to clean up the database, so let's do the rest of this as a try, and then we'll put in a finally. Finally, go clean up the database. Let's move that to the end. Okay, and here we'll say, I don't know, return products or a blank list, just in case. We don't need to really validate all the things, but we've got this products array right here as either a product array or undefined. This one will cast it into place. It's no longer a test, so we might be able to nuke this a little bit. But now that we've got our server, oh, this is a promise of product array. Okay, there we go. Are you sure? Why don't you like that? Oh, haha. What am I doing right? Am I missing a curly brace? Yes, I am, because this is part of that test. Okay, so now I've got a pure function that does all the things. Now, technically, this is the first page of the products, but I think that might be sufficient in our test so far. Here's that fixture that will just go ask the API to go get all the products and close the database on the way back through. Perfect. Here in our product test, then, we can say, get all products. Fixtures. Ooh. I did name it fixtures, not fixture. Oh, it's only up one directory, though. Okay, so now we go get all products. And now we can say, hey, now that I have all products, by all means, go grab the first product out of the thing and do the rest of the test. This get by product code method should work just fine. It should update a product. Nope, it should create a product. Let's create a method here that's actually going to be an async method. It should modify a product, and it should delete a product. Okay, all of the things that we need to be able to build it, for example, delete might be super easy. So let's say we're going to delete based on a product ID. Product ID. This product ID, we could go grab the first product, but that's probably a bad idea because that may be a real product. Let's say products.filter. We would like this product to have test dash as its product code. So p.product code. So there's that product. And then if we need extra things, const product ID off that product, then we can say, now we could, just for the sake of safety, let's say expect product to exist to be truthy. Fail here, rerun test to create product. Now that's a little fragile. Alternatively, we could go create the product at the beginning of the test, but that's a little bit farther than we want to go today. So we expect the delete to return a 200, and then let's go get that product by ID again. Go get it, and we'll go get it by product code. So let's give it a product code, const product code equals product.product code. That's awesome. We expect to get this response. And so now we expect the status to be 404. Perfect. We've got our delete method in place. Now we may want to do a soft delete, just set the active flag to false. So let's also query this and say force equals true to say, no, actually go delete it. Really, really delete it to make sure that it's gone. Okay, it should create a product. This will be fun. Arrange, act, assert. We want to say const product equals, well, we don't have an ID yet. Product code, let's say test dash, and give it a GUID. Product name. Oh, let's tell it what type of thing it is. There we go. Now we should get IntelliSense. Yep. Name is test product. GUID again. Description. This product was created by a test. Active is true. And properties, it has JSON. Haha. Okay, we've got a product. We do need to go grab request. And then let's go act on it. Const response equals request dot post. We'll post to /API/product. And we will .send the product. Now we will need to log in for these methods. Let's come back to that. Ooh, our plugin is helping there. And then let's assert res.status expect res.status to be 201 created. Now let's go get it back out. So we have this to go get it back out. This then makes this actual or expected. So let's post expected. And now, oh, this is no longer a const. Let expected.product code. And we expect res.status now to equal 200. And we'll say const actual equals res.body as product. And then expect actual to be. Now the cool thing is let me go grab my notes. To equal. The cool thing about to equal is it will recursively check through all the properties asking if it exists. So let's say actual. We expect our actual product returned to equal our expected product. Body does not exist on res. It exists. The one thing that we do need to do right here though is we need to say actual.id equals res.body.id. And because it's telling me I need to await that, I forgot the await right here. And now it'll likely be a lot happier. Now that body ID may not be there, but let's assume that it is and that works. Oh, this is expected. So we'll set the ID so that when we go get it again and grab all the things, that we'll know that works as expected. Perfect. So there's that create method. We've got this go get the thing. We could build that into a helper method if we wanted. We're not really going nuts here, so I'm not super worried about that yet. Now here we're going to delete it, and I want to go grab one to modify here. We could grab the one that we just inserted. We just inserted a test dash thing, but we could go look at the product list for a product to modify. So once this test passes, let's say product list or products.push this product expected. Now we've got that one in the product list. If we deleted it here, let's also say we've used it, for lack of a better term, product list products equals products.filter p such that not p.id not equal product ID. And now what we've said is we've used it, we expect it to be deleted, so don't try to reuse it. Let's do similar things here in this modify test. We'll go pick a product to modify. And now let's go clone it. So we'll say const actual equals object dot create. I got this wrong last time, so let me go double check. Of all the things that you need to look up every time, object.assign. We want to shallow copy this product into place so that we're not actually changing the one there, we're just changing this one. Okay, so now we've got this actual. Let's set some actual details. Actual.name equals, up here we set it to be test product GUID. Let's set it to changed test product plus GUID. Now we know it's definitely different. Actual dot properties, we can assign this to be a new thing. Modified. There we go. And now we've got a product that is changed. That's cool. So let's act. We've got this right here. We should do a put, and we'll put it to the product ID, and we will .send the actual. And now we expect it to get a 200. Now let's go get it back out. We did that here. API product, we will go get it off of the product code again. And now here's the actual, the one that we changed. And so actual should equal expected. Oh, so this one actually is expected. Fail on me. Expected is the one that we want to. So now we've got a test that will validate that this works as expected. That's awesome. Now we do need to log in to each method. So let's go do that. We need to set the authentication header dot set authorization to be a bearer token. We saw this when we were futzing with the JWT that came back from the View app. And here we'll have token. So we'll do that in all of the places that we need to log in. We'll need to log in to modify, we'll need to log in to create, and we'll need to log in to delete. Now these aren't then true. These are more smoke tests. We're not validating all of the scenarios because we would want a separate test that validated that if you didn't pass the token that you got a, oh hey, we have tests right here that do exactly that. If I didn't pass the token, I should get an auth fail in each of the places. So we've covered that scenario as well. Perfect. Now we need to go grab this token. So much like we went and grabbed the products right here, let's say let token, it's a string, and this string will say token equals await get auth token. Let's create another fixture that will get us the auth token. There we go. Now we do have a test that will get a token here, so we can clone that in a really interesting way. Let's copy all of this. And here in fixtures, new file, auth token.ts. Now we want to export default async function get auth token, take in nothing, and return the string. Well, a promise of a string because it is an async method. Now, like we did up here, we'll want to spin up our app. We definitely want to close our database on the way back through. But this content here in the middle is that piece that we wanted from, well, let's go grab it, this method right here. Now this method does that process of logging in. So we're doing that login process. Oh, I nuked the server. There we go. So it's doing the login process, and in time we probably want to pull these from config. You know, something like process.env.test username and process.env.test password. To do that, I would need to also load the configuration details, not that unlike what we did here in this app. So, you know, doing this env config. We did that here in the, did we do it here in the spec? Nope, we didn't. And so that's probably a little bit bigger than we want to take on right now. But definitely we want to pull these from config soon and then update it in both places. Okay, so we've got the request. We go fire off the request to log in, and what we get back is this token. So we can do some expect that stuff to be true. That's not bad. And then return res.body.token. Now that's our auth token that we can use. Now because we're doing it here in a before all, these are only going to run one time. They won't run again for each test. They'll only run just at the beginning of all the tests. Now we could do this in one place as just spins up, and then we would have it exactly once. Right here, we're going to do it once per test suite. But, yeah, when that gets to be a burden, we can definitely flip that. So we've got a suite of tests now that will validate once we've built this API correctly. Now, right now, all of these tests are going to fail. So that would be entertaining. NPM run test. We're going to get a bunch of requests that will try to authenticate, expect 401s and get 404s or maybe 500s. We haven't rigged up error handling in our API. We'll get a bunch of queries into the database that will do interesting things. Oh, look, we got some validation fails too, or some TypeScript errors in product list. Product list. Is it in product list? Routes, auths, nope. Fixtures product list, a function whose must return a value. Did I not return a value? Oh, I didn't save. Whoops. Let's do save all. Okay, we've got that. Now let's rerun the tests and we'll see that lots fail. And that's okay, we haven't built the code yet. We could build one test and then build one pass and then build one more test and then build the code to make it pass. But right now, we're kind of good. Oh, cannot find name server in auth token. Did I nuke that? Server. Ah, I did. Nope, here's server. Cannot find server. Did you mean server? Line 34 and 59 in fixtures auth token. 30. Oh, haha. All of the mayhem that I forgot to delete. You're right. That is a complete fail there. Okay. Nope, not tet. Test. npm run test. And now we've got all of the pieces in place. So we've got a bunch of failures. A bunch of failures. Because all of these things don't exist at all. It's going to go call into things. It got a 200, or it asked for a 200. It got a 404. All else being equal, you know, we didn't do too bad. We only have a lot of failing tests, but we got some failing tests. So now we can go look at this and build out the content to make those happen. So here inside routes, inside product, we want, we've got router.get. We want a put that will do an update product, or no, create product. We'll want a put that will update product by ID, and we want a delete that will delete product by ID. We've got our MemSQL database spun up, and so we can do these methods here. Here's that MySQL2 promise library. Let's go create some methods. Export function, export async function. Why am I exporting it? Well, it's not for public consumption, but I do want to be able to test it. I'm going to grab request and response. Those will be helpful. And I want these three methods. So we've got three things. I want create product, I want update product, and I want delete product. Now right now they do exactly nothing, which means that if I were to save and run these tests right now, my server would hang forever. So let's say res.status is 500.end. That will at the very least signal to me that I haven't built it, but don't leave this thread hanging forever. Great. So we want to pull in some things. This won't be all that different than this probably in most cases. Create product. We're going to go grab, well, we don't need a product code here, but product will come from request.body. And now we'll say, well, if not product or not product dot product code, we're here validating all of the variables that are required in our database. So we can pop open the SQL that we use to create this database. Here's that setup SQL. And so we see here that active is required, properties is required, name is required, product code, maybe active being required. We could probably assume that, but yeah, let's go validate all the things. Product code or product.name or that's good. And in this case, it's not a 404, it's a 400. 400 meaning you sent me bad data. I could give it more descriptions about what failed, and so let's just say, go better validate the product. I'm going to say if type of product dot active equals undefined. I'm going to assume that this is a new product that you did want to be active, so product.active equals true. That's one way that I can kind of make some assumptions. We can also say if type of product dot let's tell it this is a product, by the way. Product dot properties equals undefined. Then we can make that a default object. Product.properties equals a new object. Cool. So we've done a little bit of helping our users here, and also a little bit of validating the content. Now let's go create our connection. And this command now, we saw that we can put question mark for these properties. So this then is an insert statement. That's cool. Insert into catalog. I want to insert the product code, the name, the description, the properties, the active, and values. I will have, well, here's the product code, the name, the description, the properties, and the active. So, product.productCode, product.name. I've already verified that those aren't blank. Product.description. Now, the MySQL library here doesn't like nulls. And so it's possible that this could be undefined, and so we need to cast it as null. The library doesn't like undefined, but it likes null just fine. And let's stringify the product.properties into a string that we can then pass through the thing. And finally, product.active. Now this won't return a row data packet array. It's not going to return a list of products. It's going to list well, let's come look at the things that execute returns. Row data packet array, a row data packet array, an OK packet of a particular type. And so in this case, it's going to return an OK packet. Packet. OK packet. Okay, so let's go import OK packet. Now that we've got OK packet, this isn't rows, but rather result. And this result, then, we can say, well, based on the result, let's go grab the ID. Const ID equals result.insert ID. And now as we return the results, let's return ID. We do want to set it to be 201 for created. That's perfect. And then we also want to set this the normal 201 location header, res.location. And we want this to be the base URL, request.base URL. That's the URL that you called to get here. And I'm also going to append to it the ID. So now whether you want to use the results here or whether you want to use the location header, you can go grab whatever you want to be able to get at that ID. Well, let's go validate in our test that that's what we wanted to pull out. Routes product spec. In our create test, we expect the result to be a 201, and we go grab the body out of the ID out of the body, and now we know what the ID of that product is. Actually, this isn't the ID. This is the product.product code. Whoops. We do probably want to validate that product code is more is specific content. So let's say, or not, well, let's say A to Z, const product code regex equals A to Z, 0 to 9, and the dash. Those are the things that you can make in your product code. So let's say, or not product code dot test product code. If you hand me an invalid product code, one that basically won't be a valid URL, then I'm going to fail that straight away. Now, exporting this is probably a good idea as well. Export product code regex. We may want to use that in other places as well. If I remember right, we have a similar regex in the client side. So we could actually use that here to, I'm still scrolling down. We could use that here up at the top to fail out straight away if you sent me a bad product code, and that would likely help us with SQL injection. But because we're using parameterized SQL here, then SQL injection is less of a concern for us. Similar thing here. We could have just said, you know, product dot product code, and that would be very bad. Because what happens if my product code were something like this? What if it was close paren, semicolon, drop table users, dash dash. So that would make this SQL into that. That would be very, very bad. That is SQL injection. And that is why we do this parameterized SQL here, so that we can do all of the pieces to ensure that we're not breaking our database. In time, it might be really nice to do unit tests around this to validate that we can't pass in SQL injection pieces. Okay, so we've got our create method, our insert method. That was really cool. Let's go do our update. Now in our update, we have two pieces. We have the product coming out of the body, but we also have const ID equals request.params.id. Let's go double check that. Yeah. Oh, product code. Put will take in nothing. Or, yeah. And this is a post to update. That will take in an ID. And this one will also take in an ID. Whoops. Glad we caught that now. The unit test would have caught it as well. But okay, so we've got this ID, but right now it's a string. So we want to say parse int. We'll take that 10. So we want to validate all of these things, but we also want to validate ID is greater than 0, or ID is less than 1, or is not a number ID, or don't have a product, or, you know, we could pull this ID out of the body itself, but let's ignore the product.id in all the places. Shimming into the other things that are helpful here, we could use this as well to avoid needing to shim the null here. Let's do that just because it'll make it a smidge more discoverable. If not product.description, product.description equals null. Now that isn't quite fair because if it was blank, this would set it this way. Is not assignable to type string or undefined. Guess we can't do it that way. This is a little bit less discoverable, but this will get us through the day. Okay, so now that we've got our product, let's go grab our connection. And now instead of an insert, we will say update catalog set product code equal to the first thing and name equal to the second thing and description equal to the third thing. Hey, we're lining up pretty well right now. Properties equal to the fourth thing, active equal to the fifth thing, where ID equals the sixth thing. So we've got all of the other things. Let's also add product.id. Ooh, not product.id. We don't want the thing passed in the body, but just rather ID. We may want a unit test to validate that, only because it was so easy to make that mistake. Okay, so we've got the product content there. This will return an OK packet as well. If result.changed rows equals 0, well, that means that the product wasn't found and we updated nothing. We could do a get beforehand, and no, it's just easier to do this. Return res status 404.end. You got nothing. If we did a get beforehand and then we did this update, we'd have this nice race condition where, you know, is it there or is it not? Then we'd need to create a transaction. The transaction would need to go around the database and around the this update statement. That would just get to be nuts. Let's just say, let's go update it. And if we didn't get any change rows, that was our 404 straight away. Otherwise, it was successful, and we can set this to 200 and just be done. We don't need to return anything. We could choose to return the new product, but you just updated it. Maybe you're going back to the product list and don't need to care what the updates were. Or maybe you just sent them all to me and so it's good. Delete. This one will likely be the easiest. We've got most of the content that we need right here. So let's just yank this. Now there's some res.status200.end. There's some debate here. If the product isn't in our database right now, is it, should I return a 404 here? The goal is to delete the product. So if it's already gone, is that a success? I'm not of the second camp. I would say if the goal is to make it gone and it is currently gone, that is totally fine. So if the ID is invalid, then we want to fail with a 400. Otherwise, we've got this ready to go, and our SQL here then is really simple. Delete from catalog where ID is that ID. It's going to return an OK packet, and do we want to test the things and validate whether it was actually deleted or not? Now this is a hard delete. Our business logic in our application may say, hey, you know, I want to do a soft delete for most cases. Let's soft delete unless you pass a force flag. So let's do that. Const force equals request.query.force. So now if you pass a force flag and we just cast it to make sure it's either true or false, then we can do something different. So now we could say if force, and we've got this method right here already, else we'd like to do something a little bit gentler. Let's say update catalog set active equals false where ID is here. Now, do we need to pass this as a parameter? Well, it would be hard to inject SQL in here. So in spite of the fact that we're embedding false right here, I think it'll be fine. If we wanted to be really careful, we could say false like that, and that is completely fine. But because it will never ever change, I would rather let the database engine cache the query with as much information as it has. Now I just need to pass those one or two things in and we can run through it. Now we're taking the opinion that if it wasn't there in the beginning, that's totally fine. So we don't even need this result. Let's get rid of this result. And we've got a method. Return 200 at the end, and we're good. Let's run our tests. npm run test. The moment of truth. Here's the value in building one failing test and then creating the code and then seeing the test pass, is because right now we have a dozen or so tests that we've all built together that will either succeed or fail. And that might make it more difficult to figure out where the error was. So, you know, we set out to do TDD and we kind of really didn't. We kind of did test first development as opposed to test driven. Okay, so I should get a 404 when I go to product -1, but I got a 400 instead. Well, I got a 400 because I passed a number that was less than 1. Yeah. Because we're doing this ID check right here and saying invalid, then if I go to delete it, then I am going to get a 400. Well, what I wanted to do in this test was validate whether I got a 401 or not a 401. So we can just say back here in our auth test that in this case, rather than getting a 404, we get a 400 saying bad data passed, and that's totally fine. Probably in this post, we'll also get a 400 because, you know, we didn't pass a thing. This not found is the one where we would expect a 404. Cool, we got to tune those a little bit. This one, oh, actually, these ones should actually get a 401 in all the places. This is a 404 because we didn't pass the thing, but all of these, we should get authentication failures. And we're not, we're getting 401s. That's interesting. So up here in the product route, it highlighted that we didn't actually do the task that was asked of us to make these validated routes. Here in our auth route, we did have a thing right here that says we would like to authenticate with no session the JWT token that is passed. So to authenticate all of these, let's authenticate with the JWT session. And if you don't get a JWT session, then you can't do it. Can VS Code help us? Yes. So authenticate from passport. And it looks like it grabbed product from types product. Let's give it a path. to show that it is the correct local reference. Because it's in our TypeScript thing, then that may have worked out just fine. Okay, moment of truth. Now we do have the jest runner running inside VS Code. That gave us some interesting X marks and check marks. So we're kind of running two tests simultaneously here, but we're not doing too bad. Let's see if we can get these tests to pass quickly. If not, we may need to pick up later. Okay, so we have two failed test suites. The first failed test suite, we got a 404 on a post to an API product. So we weren't calling that URL correctly, perhaps. And we got a 404 when we were doing a put to that product. Did we mess this up? Put will create one and we won't pass an ID. Post will modify one and we do pass it an ID. We did. Post, another one of those things I always need to go check. Post will create, get will read, put will update. So post will create, put will update, and delete. That will likely solve all of those ones. We may choose to solve some of these test failures off camera as well, because for as much fun as it is to do all the things and all the stuff, ooh. So we only have two test failures right now. Two failed in one test suite. Now it looks like we're getting this get by ID is not passing as expected, and I can't get that test to pass ever. But should modify, should create a product. Ooh, we got an active of 1 coming back and an ID of 3 that we didn't expect. This is interesting. Here in our product test, and let's dig into it. Ooh, here's our jest extension. So if we come in here to extensions, jest, we have this jest test runner. And because nope, this jest test runner. Nope, this one's installed. This jest test runner is installed, and because it's installed, we get these really cool check marks and X marks. This test has failed, as opposed to this test here that has succeeded. So now we can just kind of cruise through and go succeed, fail. It should create a product. So we created a product, we set the ID, and now we go get by ID. And the failure that we got here is that we have an ID set, but we didn't get one returned, and our active is 1 instead of true. Let's go look at this product query and see what we've got. So we're selecting the product code, the name, the description, the properties, the active. Ooh, we're not selecting ID. We're not selecting ID at all. And now, if we don't have any rows, we're returning 404, but we do need to say rows 0.active equals not rows 0.active. We need to turn that 1 into a true or false. Unfortunately, the MySQL connector doesn't understand that this bit field coming back is actually a Boolean, and so we need to help cast it. We'll probably need to do this same experience inside the product list to get that active to work out as expected. So we actually did that here. We said go get the active and cast it into an actual Boolean. If we wanted to, we could just lift this and do it for all rows. We only expect to have 1 row in this case, so this might be a little bit simpler. npm run test. And aside from the update not waiting for the results, it looks like we now have mostly passing tests. I jumped the gun a little bit. Go, 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 go. Okay, the product code. Ooh, it looks like we stuck it in the wrong field in our test. Back to the product test. Expected.id. Did I not put that in the right spot? Should create a product. And our product code, that's definitely the ID, not the product code. In our product, select ID, product code, name, description, properties, active. So that rows should come back as expected. Here, product code, name, description, that looks okay. Expected ID to be the, oh, I bet we stuck the product code here, not the product ID. But I'll definitely take these offline. We've been at it for a bit. But this was really fun. We got to create unit tests, or rather integration tests, for our API. We did a TDD approach where we started off creating all of the tests that would validate all the scenarios that we wanted to build, and then we built out the functionality to make sure that those scenarios were met. And because of that, we were able to then exactly match the functionality that we needed. And those tests help us find some edge cases where we didn't really have the logic just so. Now we'll see here from the test results. Let's go back in here. We'll see from the coverage results that we still have a lot of code left to prove. So we would want to do more unit tests to do things like, did our validation succeed correctly? Or did our, what happens if we return results or don't return results? We're definitely not testing those right now. We're just kind of doing a quick swipe at, do we have the functionality in place that we needed? We're doing smoke tests. But we got all of our smoke tests in place, we got all of our API in place, and we're able to use the MemSQL database together with the MySQL promise-based driver to make those inserts, updates, deletes, and selects really, really easily. We had both a JSON column, kind of a document data store, and relational columns, relational data store. And so next week, let's do exactly that. Let's dig in and create an API that is really similar for interacting more with the JSON column, and ultimately build up to creating a component that allows us to quickly add and remove tags to existing products. Hey, thanks for that shout out there. This was a lot of fun. Join us next week for the MemSQL Developer Livestream.